Dave Grohl? You know the name? For decades, he's been called the nicest guy in rock, and honestly, it fits. The guy is a walking, smiling, head-banging ambassador for everything good about rock and roll. He's jammed with the Muppets, championed countless young bands, and has been the engine for two of the most important groups of the last 40 years. Everyone, and I mean everyone, wants to have a beer with Dave Grohl. But that's not the whole picture, is it? Behind that massive grin is a man with incredibly strong beliefs about what makes music real. A purist who has some very clear lines drawn in the sand. So, what happens when someone crosses those lines? We're not talking about some secret burn book. This is about a fundamental clash of musical ideals. We're going to look at his most pointed interviews and public statements to uncover the musical trends and artists that seem to get under his skin. Forget the nicest guy in rock for a minute. Let's talk about Dave Grohl, the believer. You might not look at him the same way again. To get what Dave Grohl dislikes, you have to get what he loves. The garage. It's the idea of real people picking up real instruments and making a glorious, awful, beautiful noise. It's his life story. It's the story of Nirvana and the Foo Fighters. So, when the 21st century rolled out a slick new path to stardom, Grohl saw it as an attack on everything he holds sacred. Of course, we're talking about reality TV music shows like American Idol and The Voice. These competitions became massive, promising instant fame to anyone who could nail a cover song for a panel of judges. To millions, it was must-see TV. To Dave Grohl, it was a problem. He hasn't just made a few off-the-cuff remarks. He's passionately criticized the entire system. In one of his most famous takedowns, Grohl laid it all out. He said, "When I think about kids watching a TV show like American Idol or The Voice, then they think, oh, okay, that's how you become a musician. You stand in line for 8, ... hours with 800 people at a convention center, and you sing your heart out for someone, and then they tell you it's not good enough." Can you imagine? For Grohl, this isn't just a bad process. It's a complete twisting of the creative spirit. It swaps the sweat and camaraderie of a band for a televised audition. He continued, "It's destroying the next generation of musicians. Musicians should go to a yard sale and buy an old drum set and get in their garage and just suck. And get their friends to come in and they'll suck too. ... And then all of a sudden, they'll become Nirvana. 'Cause that's exactly what happened with Nirvana." This is a deeply personal plea. Grohl sees the garage, the terrible amps, and the first few awful songs as the whole point. That's where you find your voice and build the bonds that make a band real. The idea that this could be skipped for a chance to be judged by, as he put it, a bazillionaire, was an insult to him. He's worried about the message it sends. He told journalists, "I don't want my kid to think that the only way you can be a musician is to stand in line at a song contest audition." His criticism isn't aimed at a specific winner like Kelly Clarkson or Carrie Underwood, but at the system that produces them. He sees these shows as a factory churning out performers who are technically good but creatively sterile, trained to fit a mold. He famously imagined what would happen to a legend in that environment. Imagine Bob Dylan standing there and singing, blowing in the wind in front of those judges. Sorry, it's a little nasally and a little flat. Next, he would never make it, and that's the heart of it. The system is built to filter out the very things that make rock and roll great. The flaws, the uniqueness, the raw humanity. He isn't just criticizing a TV show. He's pushing back against a cultural shift away from authenticity toward a polished, prepackaged version of what a musician should be. Before Dave Grohl was in the biggest band on the planet, he was a punk rock kid from Virginia, raised in the DIY hardcore scene of the 1980s. It was a world of basement shows, hand-drawn flyers, and a fierce anti-corporate, anti-madge philosophy. The music was fast, raw, and all about substance. At the exact same time, on the other side of the country, a very different scene was exploding on the Sunset Strip. It was the age of glam and hair metal, spectacle of Aquanet, leather, and spandex. Bands like MT Lee Crew and Poison were all over MTV with anthems about parties, women, and rock and roll decadence. For a young punk like Grohl, it represented everything he felt was wrong with music. While Grohl hasn't often attacked these bands by name, it's philosophical opposition to the genre has been a quiet theme throughout his career. He saw the hair metal movement less as rock and roll and more as a cartoon version of it, where the image was way more important than the art. He once described the era as being more about makeup and spandex. It's not the music. This wasn't just about taste. It was a clash of worlds. Punk, and later grunge, was a direct reaction against the bloated, commercialized nature of mainstream rock, and hair metal was its king. In many ways, Nirvana was the asteroid that wiped out the glam rock dinosaurs. They were the total opposite of everything the Sunset Strip stood for. They wore flannel and ripped jeans because it's what they had, not as a fashion statement. Their songs were about angst and confusion, not about finding nothing but a good time. Grohl viewed the music of that scene as creatively and emotionally empty. In his world, music was supposed to be a dangerous, unpredictable force that challenged you. Hair metal, in his eyes, just wasn't that. It was safe, sanitized, and ultimately a little boring. When grunge blew up, it wasn't just a changing of the guard, it was a hostile takeover. It was a collective middle finger from the underground to the mainstream. And Grohl was right there on the front lines, providing the revolution's thunderous heartbeat. His disdain wasn't for the musicians, personally, but for the shallow culture and style over substance ethos the genre came to represent. For Dave Grohl, that is the ultimate musical sin. This next one is a little more nuanced. It's not about a genre or a specific artist, but a mindset that Dave Grohl finds particularly offensive. You could call it classic rock karaoke bands that seem content to just replay the past instead of creating something new. Grohl is a massive music nerd. He worships at the altar of Led Zeppelin, Queen, and The Who, but there's a huge difference between honoring your heroes and being trapped by them. And Grohl has no patience for bands that get stuck. His sharpest comments on this came in a 2014 interview with the Foo Fighters approaching their 20th anniversary. He was asked about the trend of bands touring to play one classic album from start to finish. His response was blunt. "I don't like it when a band's tours just to play one past record," he said. "I f***ing hate that. I don't like it when bands do that. It's presumptuous. It's lazy. Presumptuous and lazy." Those are strong words. For Grohl, a band that stops creating and starts curating has basically given up. They're no longer artists. They're a museum exhibit trading on old glories instead of building a new legacy. He believes the whole point of being in a band is to keep pushing forward and evolving. An anniversary tour playing an old album is the opposite of that. It's a creative dead end. He explained that the best way to celebrate an anniversary isn't to focus on 20 years ago, but to focus on the last 20 years. The message is simple. Always look forward now. This might sound a bit hypocritical coming from a guy whose music is so deeply rooted in classic rock traditions. But that's the key. Grohl builds on the past. He doesn't just live there. The Foo Fighters have a sound that has evolved over decades. They aren't trying to rewrite Stairway to Heaven. They're absorbing those influences to create something new. His frustration seems to come from a fear of rock music becoming stagnant. If every new band is just a tribute act for a better older band, the genre dies. Innovation is the lifeblood of music, and for Grohl, relying only on nostalgia is the poison that stops its heart. He's not against playing the hits he knows. You want to hear Everlong, but those hits have to be part of a living thing that is still creating. A band that stops doing that has, in his view, lost its reason to exist. For most of his career, Dave Grohl's critiques were aimed at general trends. He rarely singled out a specific contemporary artist by name. That changed in June 2024, in a moment that sent a ripple through the music world and sparked a public backdown with the biggest pop star on the planet, Taylor Swift. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a quote taken out of context. This was Dave Grohl on stage in London,
Okay.
drawing a very clear line in the sand. Here's what happened. Both the Foo Fighters and Taylor Swift were playing massive stadium shows in the UK. During his concert, Grohl decided to have a little fun. With it, he started by playfully telling the crowd, "I tell you, man, you don't want to suffer the wrath of Taylor Swift." He then jokingly dubbed his band's tour the Eras Tour, a clear nod to Swift's Eras Tour. He said, "We've had more than a few eras and more than a few F-King errors as well. Just a couple. So far, just some classic self-deprecating Grohl stage banter." But then he delivered the punchline. The one that turned a joke into a viral moment. He paused and said, "That's because we actually play live." The implication was clear and direct. He was suggesting that Taylor Swift's famously slick and highly produced show wasn't 100% live. He then added, "You guys like raw, live rock and roll music, right? You came to the right fucking place." The response from Swift's famously loyal fan base was swift and intense. But for anyone who's followed Grohl's career, the comment, while unusually direct, was perfectly consistent with his core beliefs. It was his long-standing criticism of manufactured perfection, now aimed at its modern-day queen. The very next night, Taylor Swift on her own stage seemed to offer a subtle but sharp reply. She gave a huge thank you to her crew and her band, pointedly adding, ... my band, who's going to be playing live for you for 3.5 hours tonight. They deserve this so much. This interaction gets to the heart of what separates Grohl's vision of music from much of modern pop. His Eras Tour's comment wasn't just about making mistakes. It was about celebrating them. For Grohl, the possibility of error is proof of life. It's proof that what you're hearing is real and human. A show that is so polished and so perfectly choreographed that it's identical every night raises his suspicion. It suggests backing tracks and digital assist to performance that feels more like a playback than a living thing. In that one sentence, Dave Grohl put a name and a face to a trend he's pushed back against his entire career. This final entry is different. It's not about a genre or a philosophy on live music. This one is deeply personal. It's the longest, most complicated, and most bitter conflict of Dave Grohl's life. It involves the band whole, but more specifically, its frontwoman Courtney Love. The animosity between them is a tangled web of grief, money, legacy, and over 2 decades of public disputes. Their story starts in the shadow of tragedy. Before the death of Kurt Cobain, Grohl was his bandmate and Love was his wife. After Kurt died in 1994, any civility between them completely shattered. And the two people closest to Cobain's legacy became its fiercest guardians against each other. The conflict has played out on many fronts. First, there was the dispute over Grohl's music. In a 1999 Howard Stern interview, Grohl's comments were interpreted by some as a suggestion that Kurt Cobain had secretly written some of Grohl's most successful songs. This accusation that Grohl's success wasn't entirely Love's own struck a nerve and has colored their relationship ever since. Then came the legal battles over Nirvana's legacy. In 2002, Grohl and Chris Novoselic wanted to release a box set, including, You're Right, the last song Nirvana ever recorded. Love blocked the release with a lawsuit, arguing the song was too valuable to be wasted on a box set. The remaining members of Nirvana countersued. Eventually, they settled, but the damage was done. The war of words escalated over the years. Love has publicly accused Grohl of enriching himself off Kurt's legacy, while his family struggled. Conflict hit a disturbing low in 2012 when Love posted a shocking and unfounded accusation online involving Grohl and her daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. The claim was so bizarre that it prompted public denials from both Grohl, who called it upsetting, offensive, and absolutely untrue, and from Frances herself, While they've had brief moments of public peace, like a hug at Nirvana's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in 2014, it never seems to last. This isn't a simple dislike of a band's music. It's a deep, painful, two-decade-long conflict over history, money, and the soul of Nirvana. For Dave Grohl, Courtney Love is inextricably linked to the most tragic period of his life and a constant fight over the legacy of his friend. So what's your take? Is Dave Grohl still the nicest guy in rock? Or is he a passionate purist? Did any of this change your opinion of him? More importantly, what other rock and roll stories should we look into next? Drop a comment below and let us know. And if you want more stories behind the music, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. From the shiny floor of reality TV to the hairspray-heavy spectacle of glam metal. From the creative comfort of nostalgia tours to the perceived perfection of a pop megastar. And finally, to the deeply personal and bitter history with Courtney Love. It's clear that Dave Grohl is a man of fierce conviction. He isn't just a musician, he's a true believer. He believes in the power of a garage, a cheap guitar, and the raw need to make a racket. The things he criticizes are not just bands or artists, they are ideas. The idea that fame can be manufactured, that style, matters more than substance, that the past is more important than the future, and that music can ever be anything less than 100% real. So maybe the nicest guy in rock was never the full story. Maybe a better title would be the most passionate. It's because whether he's loving something or criticizing it, he does it with his entire rock and roll heart. Thanks for watching.